Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about mummies. Before we start, there should be a lined piece of paper on your desk, and you're going to do your best to make it look like this. Do not get up and get the markers and the rulers. Just use your pencil the best you can. It would be great later if you came back and later made it look something like this and reviewed your notes and reworked your notes and made them neat and usable. That's the purpose of Cornell notes. Now, we've talked a little bit about mummies. We're going to get into the whys and the hows of mummification in ancient Egypt. Many other cultures have mummified their dead for a lot of very similar reasons that the ancient Egyptians did. But ancient Egyptian mummies tend to be the most famous, and we're going to talk about them because we're doing ancient Egypt. So here we go. Do you remember Ms. Bird when we were doing Mesopotamia and she'd say, stop, take a note? Well, I'm going to do something similar to that. And either me here or me in the classroom with you right now is going to help you get these notes on your Cornell notes so that they can be usable and user-friendly. So here we go. We are not going to talk about these kind of mummies. We're going to talk about these kind of mummies. Okay? Hollywood loves to make a mummy scary. It's not really. It's just a dead person that was wrapped and preserved. That's it. If you touched it or tapped it, it would sound a lot like that. They're not monsters. They're not going to eat you. They don't come to life. It's not how it works. Okay, so here we go. So, why were mummies so important to ancient Egyptian life? Stop. Take a note. The note you should be taking is a question. Here's the question. It should look something like this. Why were mummies so important to ancient Egyptians? They were important to ancient Egyptians because ancient Egyptians believed that their life on earth was just a precursor to what was going to be coming next, the afterlife. That's all. So they had to do well on earth in order to achieve a good afterlife. They believed that their personalities, the Ba, and their spirit, the Ka, would have to be able to come back to the body, recognize it as its own, before everything can move on into the afterlife. If it couldn't recognize the physical body, then that's it. You're done. Afterlife coolness isn't going to happen to you. The afterlife is beautiful. The afterlife is perfect. It doesn't mean you're not going to work in the afterlife, because you do, but there will be no famine, no disasters. You're always happy, always well, not sick. It's a great afterlife. And so, if the Ba and Ka could not recognize the body, then they would not go on into the afterlife. So this preservation of the body is super, super important. We've talked about how mummification is expensive, and in general, that's true. So who were the mummies? Stop. In general, most mummies were the bodies of individuals who had money. Let's face it, it's the pharaoh and his family, or her family, 7 times. Priests and their families, viziers and their families, rich business people and their families, and military people who had achieved some success and their families. That's pretty much who the archaeologists are finding as mummies. So it could spread out to pretty much a lot of the general population, but not a whole lot. So let's now talk about the process. The process itself took 70 days. Stop. The process was done by priests with special training in embalming. And embalming just means preservation of the body so it could be preserved. You have to remember that the practice of mummification is very spiritual. It's not casual at all. It's part of ancient Egyptian religion. It was very sacred. It was a very important process to have done right. And it took a long time, like I said, 70 days. First, the body gets washed. Next, the organs and all the wet stuff that's going to make a body rot get removed. The stomach, the intestines, the liver, and the lungs get taken out and saved. I told you something wrong. I told you about the heart being taken out, being mummified, being put back in. No, the heart actually remained in the body with the body. The Egyptians believed that the heart was the center of you. The heart was you. It was your intelligence, your humor, your compassion, your morality, all that stuff. Everything that makes you you came from the heart. And so it was to remain with the body. If by accident it was cut out while the lungs were being removed, it would be sewn back in. That's how important it was to remain with the body. The next thing is that the organs and the body were packed with a type of natural salt called natron. It's a natural resource that you can find in Egypt. And it was kept in natron for about 40 days. And this removed all the moisture from the body. And then they'd be removed. The organs would be wrapped up and put into canopic jars. We talked about a little bit about canopic jars. Some of you might be doing your project on canopic jars, so that's cool. And then the body itself was wrapped by the priest. All the while the priests are reciting prayers and incantations and being very, very sacred about this process of wrapping it in linen. Linen is like a cotton. It's a fabric like a cotton, and oftentimes the families would provide the priests with the linen, and the priests would pick out the best parts. It would take a lot of linen. I forget what the number is, but it's yards and yards and yards, hundreds and hundreds of yards. Because first, the individual parts are wrapped, your head, your hands, your arms, your legs, whatever, your feet. And then the whole body again will be wrapped. So it takes a long time. It takes a lot of linen, and it's a slow process. It takes about 2 weeks for this to occur because the priests, again, are reciting prayers and keeping it a very, very sacred process. The linen eventually would be either painted with or dipped in resin, which is like a glue. Actually, no one really knows what that particular resin is made out of, believe it or not. Modern scientists haven't quite figured that one out yet. But it's like a glue. It holds it together. It does a lot of things. Let's talk about the wrapping. Let's talk about the reasons for the wrapping. The bodies were wrapped because you wanted to keep them safe. You didn't want any more moisture. You just took all this trouble to get the moisture out. You didn't want moisture to get back in. And then the wrappings would also help keep the body in the shape of a body so that it could be formed and placed and things so that it would look like a body. And thirdly, I don't know if you've ever found something that was really, really dried out after a long time and you picked it up and it kind of fell apart. Well, sometimes that does happen to bodies, unfortunately. And so the wrappings kept the body together. Now, a death mask will be placed over the mummy, similar to Tut up on my wall. That's pretty elaborate. Most of them look like this. And then the priest would place them in a coffin or a sarcophagus, and then the family would place them in the tomb. And that was it. You're good luck, pal. Hope you get to the afterlife. It's all up to you. We did everything we were supposed to do here for you to move on, and the individual would hope to move on. So why do we study these guys, these mummies, aside from the fact that they're awesome? Stop. Scientists learn to study them to learn about life and health and the environment and the food and the weather and illnesses, you name it, that were happening when the individual was alive. By studying the mummies, you really can determine a lot about what was going on in ancient life. But I think more importantly, and I'm going to use a quote by a gentleman while I was doing this research I found on Quora.com. He says, "We as a society are directly descended from ancient societies like Egypt and Mesopotamia because their ideas and beliefs have been shared and passed down through so many cultures. So we can learn about our society and culture by studying them." Hey guys, a little tag on extra to our mummy talk. There's a activity you can do, and you can do it at home if you want. I did mine at home. to mummify an apple. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but I did it. And as you can see, I mummified this apple on 11/28 while we were on Thanksgiving break. And we were just coming to the end of our winter break, and I thought I'd get it out. So it's not quite 40 days, coming up on 40 days. I think 40 days would have been Sunday, but I wanted to get it done now while I was doing the videos. As you can see inside, I don't know if you can see, I'll get a little shade on it so you can see what I have in there is a combination of Epsom salts and baking soda, which seem to give the best results from what I read. I've never done this before. This is my first time, so we're going to see what happens here. When I started, my apple looked like this. And now we're going to see what it looks like now. The baking soda and the Epsom salts have gotten really hard. Whoa, I just made a mess. So let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see what I'm doing here. Okay. I can see my apple. It's coming out in hunks. And I think when the priests did actual mummies, what would happen would be that the natron would get hard, kind of like this. You can see here. I can kind of crunch it up because it would be absorbing all that moisture. Okay. I peeled it and cut a little face into it. So here is my mummified apple. It's still pretty in good shape. It's not hard. It's actually, I feel a lot more moisture on it. So I'm wondering if I should maybe throw it back in for another few days. My little mummified apple, and see what happens. I'll let you know. Mummified apple.